Good afternoon, Dave.
Good afternoon to you, sir. What are we at? Happy the 11th of March already. Autumn. Summer's coming, I've been told.
Summer's coming. Good afternoon, everyone joining this session. Benjamin, Sophie, how are you from Wellington? Sarah, nice to see you. Julia, nice to see you. Alexandra, Bella, all coming in. We should have about 60 odd people who have registered for this session today, right across New Zealand, which is really fantastic to be able to share what we did together with a group in Auckland in person last week. So it'll be great to share that with everyone from around the country. We'll just give everyone another minute or so to get started. Can you hear my music?
Kind of. It sounds like Mariah Carey. I'm assuming it's not.
It should sound like Shapeshifter. Okay, no music. You have to play your own background music. Okay, welcome everybody. Let's get into it. My name's Justin Flitter. I'm the founder of New Zealand.ai. We've been helping businesses unlock potential with artificial intelligence since 2017. And one of the excellent people that I have the pleasure of working with, Dave Howden and his team at SupaHuman are joining us today. So g'day and welcome. I know we've got a number of your team on the call as well. So we've got, we have a chat window which is sitting in there. If you have any questions throughout the session, please drop them in there, and we'll do our best to take the heckles, to enjoy the banter, to give you some feedback and suggestions, and most importantly, discuss some of the use cases for AI that you're going to probably come up with or think about during this session. So, Dave, what's the plan for this afternoon?
Cool. So, firstly, that we've partnered with Justin to bring our AI return on investment methodology to Justin's audience, and as part of that, we commissioned an in-person event in Auckland. With planned scenario to do a follow-on event in Wellington and Christchurch, which are going to happen physically in person and happen in person. But it did come to our attention that there were individuals that wanted to move a little bit quicker in terms of getting involved in wrestling with where business value is unlocked by applying AI to their organization, and not just talk about the hypes around that, but go through a methodology about how do we help businesses focus on where that value is and help unlock it without just talking tech. So we're here for the next hour or so not to talk tech. We're here about how do we think about business value and giving you some methodologies to unlock that. And we're going to give it a go doing an online version of this for those of you, and the 60 of you so that registered to lean into it. So commitment from my seat is we're going to go all out and unlock as much value as we can, with a parting gift of we love doing this in person as well. So we'd also love to see you at the Wellington and Christchurch versions of this, and we'll be running this session again in Auckland. We always love to do these one-on-one as well. There's nothing better than having an engaged management team that own the problem and really ripping through where they can see business value. So the intention is to go through a few things. The methodology about how to think about return on investment for AI and demystifying all of that, and for you guys to walk away with a set of principles which are, right, I can now see how I have smart people in my business doing tedious work, and the cost and opportunity of unlocking that for the beneficiaries of the business, which is yourselves, your leadership, your shareholders, etc. But to kick things off, I thought we'd have a quick 5 minutes with me and you, Justin, just to knock around quickly and set the scene about what you're seeing right now in the coalface of educating those in the market. And then I would like to just kind of bounce that around with the work that we're seeing execute on those pieces. So how about we kick into it?
Yeah. So look, good question. So what the conversations that we're having at the moment are largely centered around how do we identify the right use cases, right? A lot of people are getting pretty bombarded with AI everything, and we're starting to get demand from a lots of different types of companies, right? It's not just professional services, but it's also into the manufacturing space, into science and research and agri-tech and healthcare, right across the board, right? And so business leaders want to be able to go back to the board with a really specific set of use cases where they can attribute business impact and business value to it. And then the second part of that is tool selection, right? Is what are, they might be looking at, Microsoft Copilot, like, well, what else is out there? And so those are kind of the two key parts of the conversation that we're hearing. They're either stuck at trying to identify the use cases and locking that in, or trying to figure out how do we re-engineer the way that we work with a different AI tools, to realize that productivity gain or that shape shift in their operations that they're after, right?
The session that we did in person last week, I think there's just one headline that kind of rings through. We've put hundreds of people through this AI ROI approach, which we're going to go through online in the next hour or so. But there's one thing that kind of comes through is that we think we're having an AI conversation, right? And I think the work that we've done with Justin over the last year, it's just proved out that really there's little AI in the conversation. There's just want for a business to be able to figure out how do you do something differently in 2025 when you have more options at your fingertips about how you can do work. But then you get blindsided by the million options that there could be to execute because of the velocity at which
and people naturally kind of go to solutions first, right? What's the solution? And where we're saying is, you got to go back to the problem. And you're right. Often you can be in a use case workshop, and half of the use cases or half of the business problems that come up don't actually require artificial intelligence to solve them at all. It might just be might be a tech stack issue, or some data is not flowing to another into another tool. And so there are these manual processes which slow things down because data is not automatically connected between one thing or the other. And so it's often looking for those tediously manual processes, those jobs that we really shouldn't be doing in 2025 anymore, to find the impactful opportunities where AI is going to add a lot of value into it.
And that kind of leads us on to a decent segue into how we're approaching this workshop. Justin, just give me a thumbs up if you can see.
Yep, you're
screen,
good.
Just making sure we're sharing. Okay. I'll just use that opportunity to kind of segue into like the headline of this workshop, which ultimately revolves around, we're not talking about AI necessarily, but an output from this will be a return on investment around some stuff. But there is a really clear theme throughout the whole of this next hour, which is forget AI for a second. Where do you have smart people doing dumb stuff? Now, I want to categorize what dumb stuff means when we talk about it, because it doesn't mean the work is dumb. It purely means that your human biology was designed to do certain things, and it wasn't read the internet in a millisecond. It wasn't wrangle 20,000 lines of VBA code or Excel content to figure out insights. It was to provide reasoned, creative scenario solutions to everything that's at your fingertips. And why I say that is that this could be an AI conversation, but if you look at technologies that have been brought into life ever since the dawn of the wheel, back whenever that was invented, it's how do you apply those technologies to help you move the needle in certain parts of your business. And when you look at how we dig holes in the ground now, you don't use your hands, you use shovels, and you use an excavator. And with AI in the mix now, it's purely another capability to be able to apply to work how it was done and how we now want to do it in the future. And that's the lens we're going to apply with this workshop today, is where do you have smart people doing dumb stuff, and how do we turn that thought into something that your business understands, which is essentially dollars and cents. So it can be discussed at a strategic level and investment cases be unlocked. Now, in terms of an ask, please do interrupt, ping into the chat. I think we've got the ability to bring people into conversation as well. And then Justin, if you're okay to kind of wrangle that through, if people do want to jump into the conversation.
Absolutely.
And I would definitely encourage that as well. When we do this workshop in person, we normally break away for about half an hour, 45 minutes for people to wrangle through some stuff. That doesn't quite work online. So this is going to be some solo work here. And there'll be some after work if you want to continue that. But the SupaHuman team are here post this call to make sure that you've got all the support you need to take best value of it. Just as a caveat, I'm recovering from laryngitis. So I'm going to be just making sure I'm staying on top of the slightly croaky nature I've got, but I'm committed to being here, so we're going to make it. We'll make it happen. Okay, well, on that basis, I think we'll crack into it, Justin.
Go for it.
Cool. Turn off that, whatever's going on there. There we go. Okay, cool. So 2 things we're going to cover. We're going to do a quick fireside chat with Justin, which we're kind of starting to wrap through, but also Justin will be chipping in out throughout this session. Then we're going to move on to the AI return on investment workshop, focusing on return on investment and use cases. You will be sick to death of thinking about use cases. If you're here, that's probably likely a top of mind for you. I just wanted to set a headline for you around thinking about use cases. Other than smart people doing dumb stuff, there really is not, in our view anyway, which is not always correct, but I'll give you our lens on it. Your business is pretty unique because you've spent the whole of your business trying to be unique, because that's what marketing says you should do in terms of how you're bringing a unique value proposition. Therefore, it's very difficult to kind of go to Google and say, what are the use cases for AI for my business? You will have unique processes, unique methodologies about how you do stuff. And we're really going to focus on that today. It's a lot of the time I get asked the questions, what are the use cases for AI in manufacturing or agri-tech? And whilst there's themes, ultimately, only you know where the tedious work exists and how it can be extracted. We're going to go through unlocking that today with our framework. So pretty clear-cut agenda for the next hour or so. Now, I've been quoted last year, quoted on saying this, but I did not make this up. This is not a quote from me. However, I've chosen to use it because when I saw it at a different conference overseas, it kind of rang true. Of a lot of the time, the hype around AI does feel like we're in a bit of a washing machine, and everyone's kind of cracking on with figuring out the use cases and getting value from it. What I will say is this: we work in this industry full-time, hard out, working with businesses that are investing in this stuff. The ones that you're not seeing on LinkedIn are the ones you want to be careful about, because they're just getting on and getting it done, which means they're seeing the gains. Be mindfully wary of those that are throwing the latest and greatest non-business focused demos around. It's a case of they're not deeply embedded into their organizations. There are a lot of people who are moving quite quick at this, but there's a huge majority that are still in the phase of figuring out, well, what investments do I need to make into a very, very broad theme and discipline, which is artificial intelligence. So we're going to demystify some of this today. I want you to look at some of the businesses that are doing some of this work and making headway. But if you're feeling that there's a lot of noise and you're not quite in the game, my counsel to you is push through that, because you're probably closer to unlocking a value than you think just by starting to have the conversations. So what we want to get executed over the next hour is 3 things. We want to look at what is possible and why it's important without going into the technology. We're going to look at how to identify the use cases for your business using a simple equation of business value and feasibility. And then we're going to introduce you to the AI ROI calculator, which is a tool we've created for you and for our customers and for the New Zealand community around just giving you the tools to be able to plumb in numbers as you see them and drive scenarios. We're going to take a look at that today. So what that means is, hopefully, if we've done our job, you'll leave with a sense of why this is such an important conversation and a methodology to be able to identify and calculate a step forward. I think in 2025, I believe in 2025, we're seeing now the same patterns occur that we saw in the early ages of the internet, which was wholly disruptive technologies that have the ability to drastically disrupt the status quo. And you look at over the course of a 15, 20-year period about what the internet actually did to the world, it essentially shifted wealth from traditional organizations into newfound created businesses. Google, Meta, basically the Magnificent Seven relationship to Microsoft and AWS and Google, they were all born on a technology that really wasn't mainstream until the late 90s, early 2000s, and now they occupy at least 3/4 of the enterprise value of business. And before that, it would have been car manufacturing and petroleum would have been up there, and oil companies, but essentially that's shifted into this wholly digital driven business. You fast forward to 2025, the same thing's repeating itself. There are technologies now which are being born, like the internet, in this AI discipline, that essentially means that how we used to do stuff is not going to be how we're going to do stuff in the future. And that's going to lead to not just AI-assisted work, but brand new businesses who are absolutely ripping the guts out of how work used to be done. And we're going to see another tranche of organizations similar to Uber, Airbnb, etc., and Netflix, which essentially stole the limelight from a traditional way of doing something and now doing it in a whole new way. The interesting thing is that change of just introduction of the internet and connecting 8 billion people happened over a period of 25, 30 years. What was happening in AI is we're seeing things happen in a matter of months to displace those pieces. Now, whilst that sounds hypey, you can see it happening in front of your eyes because of the way that that whole technology sphere is aggregated and the speed at which things can move now. But as it stands, I believe that if we're not thinking about how AI assists and does work for you in your value proposition, there is huge amounts of risk for organizations who continue to carry human-led work where AI can do it for you. Because ultimately your competition and or startups are thinking about how they do things in an AI first way where they don't carry that human cost of labor. That is really the thin part of the deep wedge of what that's going to look like over the course of the next few years as AI startups start to displace knowledge work as we go. There is a blessing in this story, which is as your business is your business, it's got a lot of intellectual property and knowledge normally, especially if you're in knowledge work, how your methodology is how you do something. And if you can institutionalize that in an intelligence, you can essentially beat the startups to that punch. Just a case of getting out of the way of figuring that out yourself. And there'll be those of you that are in that mode where you can see where your industry could be disrupted and you want to play a part in that. And in fact, a good 30% of the work we do here at SupaHuman is not around necessary work automation. It's about turning those traditional businesses into AI first businesses to help them get a head start. Okay, so just a bit of hygiene before we kind of launch into it. So why are we qualified to lean in with Justin and put on this webinar? Well, SupaHuman as an organization, where we specialize in building automation systems and organizational intelligence for customers across Australia and New Zealand. And we're a team of 30 now, sat here in Auckland. And we attract talent to our organization who have been doing AI before it was cool, for the purposes of having their flex their muscles on some of the greatest opportunities to automate work. We've delivered over 100 projects across Australia and New Zealand. In fact, we've got clients across Europe and the US now. And we are experts in the technologies that come to life from the main cloud providers, be it Microsoft, AWS, and Google, specifically related to artificial intelligence. But no business in AI is old. We're less than 18 months old. specifically focused on building the muscle memory it takes to automate work and free your smart minds from tedious work. And we're going to take a look at some of those customers that are leaning into that as we go throughout this process. So pausing there and thinking, that's all very well and good, Dave, but okay, why do you care about this? Well, there are three things that we believe are fundamentally important to you, regardless of technology. Your boards and executive leadership team will be likely on the mandate to drive the business's performance in one or all three of these areas: growth, risk, and efficiency. Regardless of the technology, how do we maintain growth? How do we do more with less from an efficiency perspective? And how do we do all of that in a low risk way and also reduce our overall risk profile as a business? Now, whether it's moving to cloud, embracing AI, digitization, or electricity, or the industrial revolution, whatever technology shift that we've been in since the dawn of time, the shareholders of a business and its beneficiaries have really only cared about these three things. From a board's perspective, make the numbers go up, do more with less, and make sure we do it with a low risk profile as possible. Now, why do we care about this? It's because AI as a promise impacts these three things so much in terms of the ability to support growth, the ability to drive efficiency, and computationally do things better than humans can in terms of removing risk. Because the needle shifts so much, that's why the intensity is there from a market perspective to figure this stuff out. But at its rawest form, it's a very simple equation. How do we apply something to help us grow, be more efficient, and drive risk? And that's starting to now bring to life how we think about use cases, which is great. There are things that get in the way of growth. How do we remove those? There are human processes that get in the way of being efficient. How do we remove those? And there are humans in the process of our business where they're actually not very good at the job. An example I use quite a lot is that we do some work with a large wealth management fund who do tax advice, and they believe that their tax advisors are no more than 70% accurate because of the complexities of the tax legislation. So what's the risk of getting that wrong? Quite high. And AI is very good at wrangling with complexities of legislation. So you can kind of look at this and go, well, it's not just about doing it safely, it's about, are humans doing it in a risky way, the current way, and we can do it slightly differently as we go forward. So why do we care? Growth, efficiency, and risk. The needle shifts pretty largely across those three things. But to make that work, we kind of need to take a look at what's possible. So we're going to go to, we're definitely not talking tech, but we're going to go to some baseline theory here of AI as specifically generative AI as a concept. So not to go too technical, but there are some fundamental things we're going to talk about. You'll have heard of large language models or language models, because not all of them are large, but some language models. As a baseline technology that's built on something called a GPT methodology or science, a generative pre-trained transformer. That's where GPT and the OpenAI stuff comes from. Essentially, the emergence of generative pre-trained transformers birthed the concept of a large language model, which essentially mathematically is a predictor that says, if I am trained on a whole load of things like the internet and all this corpus of text, can I accurately predict based on what I've been told what I need to give a user on the output? And that's awesome, because now we have a natural interface to the world's knowledge, which I can ask her something and get a very, very comprehensive, confident answer back on information that the GPTs, these generative pre-trained transformers, have been built upon, which feels magical. If you've interacted with ChatGPT, it knows the world's knowledge pretty well. It will confidently make you feel awesome about its answers. Really, all it's doing, it's providing prediction of what you want, and it's doing it at light speed, as in finding and recalling information to answer those queries. Now that's all well and good, because you've now got, for the first time ever, a natural language interface that's competent dealing with the world's information. The problem is it has zero concept of you as an individual. It doesn't know who Benjamin and Richard and Emma are. It doesn't know what you're responsible for. It doesn't know the intellectual property of your business, doesn't know your policies, procedures, your compliance standards, the data that exists within your organization, or your brand, your how you talk. But if it did, if you had the same concept of ChatGPT, which is built upon these generative pre-trained transformers, and it also fully understood that you were a New Zealand business that focused in manufacturing, and you were ISO compliant and all these things, just think about what work it could do. And that would lead to a very, very robust baseline for the automation of work, to give you the ability and all of your humans in your organization to generate, create, recall, and decide on how they do their jobs a hell of a lot faster and remove those limitations. And that's what we build here at SupaHuman. We take the multiple amazing Gen AI services that exist, we engineer them to connect to and reason with your world's knowledge, and to help you automate very, very complex tasks with this stuff. And now we've got a sense about what's possible, how these technologies can help you work. It's important to kind of rationalize what that gives you. And we call this approach organizational intelligence. It's not just AI for AI's sake, it's AI that gives you, your business, your world, and is then starting to get to this scenario of the future of automation of work. Okay, so who have we done some of this stuff for? All of these companies, plus many more, have been through the methodology we're about to walk you through now, which is how do you take that formula and apply it to work that exists? And these use cases fall out the back of that. And this is just for a little bit of inspiration about what work you've got in your business and how it can fundamentally change. You'll notice that for some of these brands, the work that we've done for them isn't some back office automation. It's actually their core business value proposition that we're driving. So if you look at our 2-hour clinical trials in the middle there, they're basically selling to drug companies that they're going to do a compliance trial and do it in the right way. That was humanly driven. It's now AI driven. The reason that they're looking at their core business value proposition and augmenting it with AI is because if they don't do it, someone will, and that's an existential issue for them. So before we kind of get into the framework of identifying business value and looking at the 3 main areas where you can identify that across growth, risk, and efficiency, I'm going to take a look at a quick example. So actually, before I play that, I'm just going to explain this. So we entered into a partnership with Governance 4, who are a data and AI governance boutique expert in New Zealand. They support businesses with how to think about governing AI services. They also support businesses in helping them build data governance policy for data privacy, for banks, for insurance companies, building that policy off regulation, and then turning those into controls. Now, if you think of an organization like a bank, they're regulated with about 60 plus different standards, which all need to be humanly read, interpreted, policies built, controls built, and then those controls stewarded throughout an organization. And a colleague within a bank that we're working with recently confidently told me that they believe 30% of the whole of the human capital of the bank is dedicated to being compliant. So we took this as a challenge and we decided to build an AI agent service that automated that whole thing. So what we've got here is a lightweight demo of AI reasoning with the New Zealand Privacy Act and building a privacy policy for the purposes of showing how quickly you can build and update the policy creation around the New Zealand Privacy Act, and then also how quickly you can create controls off the back of that. Now, if you're not familiar with controls, a control is essentially how you adhere to a policy, and these can be wildly complicated. Now, if a New Zealand bank is putting 30% of their time into maintaining and managing policies and controls, and there are 9,000 people in that bank, We've got 3,000 people there that are essentially doing something that's of no value to the end consumer, which drives prices up. At its rawest form, that is tedious work. It's humans that are doing biologically limiting activities of reading through and creating stuff off the back of knowledge. Now, based on the formula we just put through, which is a large language model plus knowledge equals the ability to do this at light speed, this is exactly what AI is built to do. Reason with complex information and topics and turn that into assets and artifacts based on a grounding set of principles. There we go. So this is pretty much close to real time. So you see we've, based off the New Zealand Privacy Act, we've built a first version of a privacy policy there. Here is the drafted policy. We'll just download it and take a look at it in Word format. You would confidently be paying Deloitte, WC, a good $20,000 to come in and write one of these, if they were to come in and do this on a consulting basis. And this is a purely bit of what, 3 minutes into this demo, a 3-minute exercise. But now we need to turn that policy into controls, which is, well, what are the actual things you need to do to adhere to that policy and keep people, keep people ruled by. I guess there's probably not there's a better phrase to put that, but ruled by is not the right way. Essentially, this means things like as a business, we're going to lock the doors at 8 o'clock at night. We give everyone access privacy cards. We're going to encrypt data at rest, all of those things. It's not really policy. They're things that we just need to have as level 1, level 2 controls. And if you're in that space, this will resonate with you. So this is going to take about another minute, and these controls will be created. Now, interestingly, this looks like it's one agent at work doing all of the stuff. This is actually 6 different AI services all working in tandem. We'll refer to it in the pool name, like an agentic backbone, which are all doing their independent tasks. One of which is they're purely driving accuracy, which is actually doing the same work as the other agents, but checking for accuracy on the way through. So we've uploaded that policy that we just created, and now the AI is off creating the controls off the back of that. And it's going to spit this out in an Excel format, ready for the business to consume, do what it needs to do. In the UI, it doesn't look like an Excel format. This is a .xls here that we'll drag into the screen in a second. Why this is important is it's a productivity killer for the country when we're doing these things by hand. New Zealand as a whole is very close to being kicked off the OEDC as a good benchmark for how we get work done. And we, businesses here would be paying tens of thousands of dollars to have this one document in front of you crafted, when really all it takes is AI plus legislation. The output is as you find it. So that's a quick example of just one example of the work that we're working on, to give you a sense of where our partners have identified that they've got smart people doing dumb stuff, and how they should not be doing that. And we've built AI services across agents that can write and compile reports for council, can do policy creation, like I've just shown you, assess documents against educational standards, respond to RFPs for sales teams, write training materials on behalf of the NZ QA training providers, and reason with decades and decades and decades of information for the purposes of doing audits and insights. The kind of opportunities are endless, but only you know your business and whether you have the smart people doing dumb stuff. And that's the process we want to go into now. So we're now going to introduce you to the framework of how to think about return on investment. And this is a simple framework that will be worth you taking a screenshot of this, or I might put a picture of it into the chat in a second. There are 2 axes here. One is business value and the other is feasibility. And essentially we want to kind of position the ideas that you have around where the tedious work is in your business into 4 quadrants. The first is a no-brainer. Where have we got work that is highly feasible to execute and delivers exceptional business value? Now you'll notice that there's no real dollar values in value here. It's kind of impossible for us to put dollar values on this because what's meaningful for $1 billion business is not meaningful for a $500,000 business. So it's really subjective to you about what you consider business value. But ultimately, you will know and get a sense of, okay, whether it's worth your time or not. In terms of feasibility, that's where we can help. We'll unpack that conversation as we go in terms of like the feasible nature of some of these things. But when we go back to the list of use cases we've done so far, all of those were feasible and were done within a pretty decent budget. And when I say decent budget, I mean like within an economical budget of moving this work forward. Most of the projects we entertain here are sub 3 months in size. There's only so much money you can spend in 3 months. Like we're not talking millions of dollars worth of investment in this. So the 4 areas we want to position the use cases are no-brainer, low-hanging fruit, which is not massive business value, but easy to get done. Big bets, loads of business value, but there's some complexity to that. And then the stuff we're probably not going to get to, which is the backlog. The backlog being it's just too hard. And that's okay. We just want to know what they are. So firstly, we want to take a look at the first of 3 considerations when thinking about return on investment. The first is people. Now, there's 3 to 4 metrics that drive the people equation. The first is how many people or what percentage of their time is spent doing activity that you consider tedious or dumb. Then you need to consider the cost of that person. And then the final thing, which is not relevant to everyone, is the upside per day of that person. I'll explain what we mean by upside. If you are in a business where your people are chargeable to the market, we really want to be capturing what that day rate is also. That's important for a reason. If you can take 30% of the time and give it back to your people, and that time is chargeable, it's not just saving their salary, but it's also creating additional GP for your organization. Now, don't worry about the mathematical gymnastics. We have a calculator that will do all of this for you. Second is risk. What types of risks are you carrying? And what is the magnitude and chance of those happening? And is there a chance that AI can just do those better? So to go to a tax example, again, from when we spoke about tax earlier on, if people are doing 70% accurate tax advice and AI could say real high 90s, what risk does that mitigate for you? And then finally, we've got revenue and cost. Now, this can kind of be thought about as people as well, but I would encourage you not to think about cost and people in the same line item, but I'll explain what we mean by revenue and cost. The revenue opportunity around the return on investment is that what work aren't you getting to that you could get to? So for example, if it takes you a week to respond to a sales tender that comes into your business, you've only got so many people that are doing those tenders. But if they only took 5 minutes, you could respond to a lot more tenders, which would mean that your sales funnel would dramatically increase. That's not reducing cost, it's not creating revenue, but it's essentially like how many more shots are you taking at the market, which you otherwise would not be taking. With this framework in mind, I would now encourage you to start thinking about where do you have smart people doing dumb stuff in relationship to 1, 2, and 3 of this. And to help drive this, we have built a AI ROI calculator to help you facilitate these conversations. We'll take a quick look at that, and I would encourage you to jump to another tab and jump onto the SupaHuman website and take a look at this. So on superhuman.com, if you go there on the top tab, you'll see the AI ROI calculator. Here you can select your industry and then start to work through the numbers that you might have in mind around the ideas of where you've got smart people doing dumb stuff. There are 2 options on the calculator. One is percentage of time. The other is time per task. Now, percentage of time essentially is more where it's probably more of a blunt axe around how to do the calculations, whereas time per task is far more granular. Ultimately, what this calculator will do is look at the time or percentage of time it takes now to execute a task, the cost of that, and then the upside related to if you've got a billable resource or not, and give you the output, which essentially is how many FTE full-time equivalents or full-time employees is it taking to do that work now, and what we believe it's likely to reduce to when you apply AI to that. Now, as a rule of thumb, for something that's in the sweet spot for AI, you could confidently say 80 to 90% reduction in the amount of effort to execute that task, and that's what this is hedged on. So the example here, there are on the screen now. There are 50 people. They're doing a task that takes 30 minutes. They're doing it 5 times a week. With that in mind, that task is costing the company 813 days of human labor, $500,000. The application of AI was able to reduce that to sub 100 grand, 66 grand in this instance. So I encourage you to play around with this. Don't feel like you need to download the report necessarily. That's purely just going to send you the same stuff you've got on the screen. Just play around with it and get a sense of how you might position that on those use cases on this screen here. And what I'm going to do is, in fact, I'm going to take a screenshot of this and put it into the chat so you guys can have it on screen whilst you're thinking about it. If by the magical power of technology this works, you should have it in the chat. There we go. Cool. Okay, perfect. Second. Cool. Okay, so we're gonna break into a short exercise and dig for gold. This is really just the time for you guys to. We're not even going to take 5 minutes. It's only going to be 5. Just a chance for you guys to have a quick bio break, grab a drink. We'll reconvene in like sub 5 minutes. And then we're going to start to open the floor for questions and discussions around this, and help make sure that we're unlocking and validating any things around the feasibility of ideas that you guys have got. And then that will start to get the juices flowing. Then me and Justin and the rest of the SupaHuman team are on hand to help unpick those. So there are 2 other assets that I'm going to drop into the chat now. These are these 2 slides here. 2 slides that drive the more qualitative and quantitative side of thinking. So not everything's around the dollar. There are 2 assets here that kind of walk through what we are seeing in the market as the top 6, the top 7 conversations and themes around where people are thinking about quantitative and qualitative measurements, because not everything drives the dollar. Some things just drive better accuracy. Okay, well, how do you put a dollar on that? Just do it. If someone's paying you for good work and you can do work better, does that drive any benefit? In some instances, yes. In some instances, no. But we want to have you thinking about those. So there's a list here of in New Zealand specifically, the top 7 quantitative measurements that people are thinking about. And then we've got the top 7 qualitative ones as well. But instead of flicking around the screen, I'll put these into the chat also. So I encourage you guys to take 5 minutes, grab a drink. We'll reconvene at just before 3:20, and we'll get back to it. But happy to take any questions before we do get into that.
Thanks very much, Dave. Yeah, appreciate that. Lots of I think when you've been running through this exercise and working with companies for at least the last year for you guys, right? More than that. You start to see some consistencies and commonalities where companies find value, right? And it's not just, this is not necessarily an AI specific, narrative, is it? It's
No.
it's a playbook really for figuring out where to find value for anything that you're trying to do. Process improvements.
Very few times have we even really said AI too much in explaining what it's capable of. And yeah, when you realize the other side of unlocking this value is actually, one of the team uses this all the time at SupaHuman. I kind of like it. I don't overuse it because it's his. But he said, well, what's the alternative? And that can kind of be a pressure scenario. Or you can actually think of that and go, no, well, what actually is the alternative here? Because when you look at how work gets done, if you continue to do things in a way that's perceived as, and I'll say it as we kind of talk about it, in a dumb way, because there's a better way to do it, at some point your whole industry is doing things in a different way to you. And therefore, that's a quick way for your business to go out of business. And right now, the leveraging
Well,
of
you
those
fall
tools
behind very quickly, don't you?
well, that's right. Or you can accelerate, which means you get there early, which carries inherent risk in itself. But those that got to the streaming race early won the streaming battle. And those that got to the internet race first won the internet race. There are many social media platforms that came after Facebook that didn't do very well because they were too late to the game. Same with e-commerce, right? Amazon was first come off the rank, and then look what happened. And we're in that situation now. Is that, do you wait until there is already a competitor that is going to operate the same service as you at a third of the price? Or do you take this as an opportunity to go, right, we are the market leader right now. We have to absolutely transform how we get stuff done and capitalize on that intellectual property that you currently have. Because there is a cost of doing nothing in a lot of these situations. Yeah. Okay. Any questions from anyone whilst we're any points of note, any clarifications that anyone's got whilst people are off getting a drink or taking a view of other work? Happy to discuss some stuff around. Good. That's all golden. Gal, thank you for putting the calculator into the chat. If people want the link to the ROI calculator, it is available there for your consumption.
Yeah, I mean, for all of these sessions, we really want people to. We hope that it starts sparking your thinking and thinking around the use cases that you'll have, right? Start discovering what and share these resources across your team too. Because the more people you have in your organization that are starting to look for those dumb tasks that we don't have to do anymore, the better. And certainly, you might have a spreadsheet, a shared spreadsheet, or some way, it might be a channel in Slack, wherever it happens to be, where people can start dropping in. Could we start using AI to do X, Y, Z? And all of a sudden, those ideas kind of gel together and bubble up, and they probably group together in quite a logical way too. That give you a lot of impetus as well. Mary, good question. David can pick up the question from Mary as well if you want to.
Mary's asked, how do I present this information when convincing the boss to do a new intervention? I kind of say it as we see it. The numbers do the talking, and if we go back to like growth, efficiency, and risk, the calculation and the approach we're trying to work through with this methodology is designed to go, this task that we're doing in an inefficient way is costing us $4 million a year. We believe, because we've engaged with experts that do this for a living, we believe that task should cost us no more than $500,000 based on applying some technology. So on that basis, there's a $3.5 million saving to be applied here. And I don't know about you guys, but if one of my team turns around and says, "Hey, Dave, I can save you $3.5 million," it's pretty much negligent not to explore that. So, of course, there's work to be done in the due diligence on that, but that's kind of the way I would think about it. And we're here to help you, Mary, with that, like in terms of, fully for 50% of the customers we work with, we're pitching to the exec and pitching to the board alongside the stakeholders that want to reflect and make this change.
Ian, good question from you. Could we perhaps have a list of the tasks that are feasibly replaceable by an AI process? And I think this goes back to a little bit of what Dave mentioned earlier in the show, is that there are lots of different use cases, or there are lots of use cases that are applicable to almost any business or to lots of different businesses, but how they are achieved or how those tasks get done will be different from one business to the next. And so the solution that gets applied, whether that being services or tech, will be unique to that business, depending on the domain knowledge and the skills and your tech stack and all the other things that that go into play. So, that's what we do with a use case workshop, and Dave and the team will do them as well, as we go through and we get a laundry list of all the different tasks that slow business down, people find frustrating, take heaps of time, and we deep dive into those to actually really understand where are the spaces that AI can thrive. Dave, do you want to add anything into that? I mean, it's a
I mean, it's, I've just put the slideware to the chat, and if Ian, if we flick through to the qualitative and quantitative sections at the back of that, you're starting to get a sense that those ROI measurements are things that are right for the application of AI to them. Now, I want to give you as direct answer as I can. Your business is your business, and the specifics of the tedium will be specific to you. So my guidance would be get into a room with those that have got pattern recognition on this stuff. The SupaHuman team does this one-on-one for customers all the time. And we're like, just unpack how you do stuff. And we will look at that with you and go, right, if there are 30 steps in this process, we believe that at least X percentage of them can be shifted to something that you don't need to do as a human. Forecasting, writing reports, compliance checks, resource consents, they're all things that, given the right inputs, the output is and should be AI generated. But this is a lot of the time, Ian, it's a negotiation of, I've got this idea, can this be done? Where have we seen it done before? How feasible is this stuff? And you just need experts in your domain and experts who have done it before in other domains to go, yeah, if you put those two things together, this can be done. Good questions, guys. Good questions. Okay, cool. So we'll take stock about where we're at, and then we'll open up for anyone that's got a use case or a series of use cases that they want to kind of run through. And not sharing is also okay, but we are this. Everyone does get. We do get group benefit by people sharing. So what are we looking at? Applying a lens to your business where you, across people, risk, and revenue, you identifying whether there is high business value, relationship with numbers that you may or may have not funded to the online ROI calculator available at superhuman.com. And I'll give you a couple of examples from the session we had last week. We held the session at Microsoft, and I tasked the group with saying, if someone can find me $5 million worth of saving, then that's the benchmark to kind of come away with. The closest second place was 3.3 million of saving, which was great. The winner was 8.8 billion. But then that's what happens when you have Microsoft in the room. They've just got bigger levers to pull. So not that this is a competition about the size of the return, but a lot of the time it is quite confronting in a way to look at how much things do cost you, and we do want to identify what they are. Bearing in mind, a lot of technology investments are made based on small percentages of change. We're looking at huge percentages of change. People will spend $1 million just to save 2% on something. And we're saying, for a lot of instances, you can save up to 90% of the cost of doing an activity. So the numbers can look a little bit wild occasionally, and that's okay. But genuinely, they are pretty real. So I'm going to put the opportunity into the 27 people that are on the calls camp, and look for someone who's prepared to share a thought, an idea they've got around a use case and application, and share that with the group. So the next part is on you guys. Who's up for it? Don't make me ask Justin to pick on someone. That'd be unfortunate. We'll give it 10 more seconds for those brave of you, and if not, I'm going to pick on Justin.
Ian will have one.
3 cans. I'm sure Ian will have one. Yeah.
Mary.
There we go. Yeah, got him, Mary. Great. Do you want to bring Mary into the conversation, Justin? So we can do it.
Participants. Mary, I'm going to bring you. I'm going to find you in my list in here, and I'm going to bring you on screen. So I just click the prompt.
There we go. Hi, Mary.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Got you loud and clear. Thank you for sharing.
So I'm a doctor and I work for a large international company, and I want to standardize medicals that they do all around the world. And I need to present this business case, and I'm not a businessy kind of a person. And I'm talking to executives that are international, and they want to know what's in it for us. And I'm thinking, hey, people, it's a no-brainer. We want to kind of standardize this all over the world. People are doing the same task, whether it's in Africa, South America, Russia, wherever it is, and we want to make it all the same and have the same types of people doing it for the same amount of money, and really kind of standardize it so that we're treating everyone fairly. I get all of that in my brain, but then I need to translate it to these businessy people.
Okay, cool. Got it. So on a non-dollar basis, like forgetting the numbers for a second, what like the top 2 or 3 benefits to either the patient or to the organization with just standardizing? I can see them, I can feel them, but like it makes total sense. But like, what are those in your eyes, Mary?
It's predictable, it's evidence-based, and it's easy to do internationally.
Say that the individuals that are carrying out that process, are they transient?
Yes.
So they can move from South Africa to the US, and it would be very useful.
They could do, or you could do locals. Yeah.
Or you could do your locals. Okay, cool. So it sounds like moving resources around the world to be able to deal with capacity constraint is a good non-dollars based benefit, which is how do we take the world's capacity to do this process and have them efficient everywhere?
Yes.
That's useful because it allows you to capacity manage the system without local constraint, especially if you're doing telehealth as well, right? If it's a telehealth procedure.
Yes.
Very, very useful. There'll be a cost to the inefficiency of that, which leads me on to kind of the qualitative stuff, which is ultimately if there's an organization involved, be it charity or otherwise, it comes down to the money conversation, which is how can we then start to plumb in, well, what's in it for me piece. And that, I think, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of the organization, Mary, because it's inappropriate. I don't know what their beneficiary drivers are, but we've never seen a business case signed off by any company that doesn't have a yin and a yang. There is, we think we should do this because it's better for patients and it's better for the customer.
Yep.
How does it impact the P&L? And that's the bit that I think we can help you on, is a case of, well, let's have a look at this. If we standardize this procedure and automated certain parts of it, do we take it from a 20-minute exercise down to a 15-minute exercise?
Yes.
Can we do 20% more of it? If there's constraints in the system, can we do 20% more of this procedure with the same human capital? And if we can start to see those things, they become just a very good talking point. You don't need many of them either. One is enough. 2 is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
More than 2, it becomes confusing. You kind of want just the 1 and the 2 of going, our patients benefit for these reasons. You benefit
Yes.
for these reasons. We can take a 20-minute process and make it 15, which frees up 25% capacity in the system. That is a revenue opportunity, is worth X. That's it.
Wonderful.
At that point, you've got me on the hook at that point.
Yeah.
So just going from, I'm making these up, right? But just going from 20 minutes to 15 minutes,
Yes.
you've released 25% capacity back into the system. That essentially gives the organization the ability to add 25% more revenue to its business without increasing its bottom line OPEX. Doesn't need to spend any more money on payroll. It just gets capacity back to bill more stuff. Well,
Beautiful.
that's what you're putting in front of someone, which is,
yes.
You want 25% more capacity in the business for free? Yes, please. And our patients get better value as well. So we win emotionally, we win financially.
Beautiful.
At that point, yeah. So again, I'm making all this up now.
Lovely. I love it. Yep.
So happy to riff on it if you want to take a little deep dive on it.
Excellent.
Obviously,
Thank you.
there's a how pathway as well. Like there's the hypothetical payoff, and then there's, well, this is how we're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you for that, Mary.
Excellent.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
That's okay. It's okay. Okay, cool. So just on that point then, Justin, if no one else will share, talk me through in a couple of minutes the most impactful AI use case that you've seen.
Oh, jeepers, picking one. We were working with an organisation that processed applications for nurses coming into New Zealand. Those nurses had to fill out a form. So they had a written form, a phone call, and then an assessment. And it was all done. I mean, the form was just a Word doc, and so the assessors were getting back ChatGPT written answers to questions that we need to make sure that they have the competition, the understanding and the lived experience of being in a nurse and whether they qualify to meet in New Zealand. Anyway, the solution there was that they recorded the transcripts of the calls and they digitized the form process so that it was easier to determine if the response was perhaps written by AI or perhaps more so was not written by that person, i.e. the verbal interview and their written response were different, and that created a red flag in terms of language used and those sorts of things. So I guess trying to make it easier for them to assist nurses applying in New Zealand. The other one that I really like was one that you guys worked on as well with House of Travel, and I think that's a pretty classic kind of example where you've got a company that's spending tens or perhaps 100 hours producing an RFP or a resource consent application or a funding proposal. There are many different people at play to get that piece of work done, and there's lots of different pieces of knowledge and information from around the business that has to be curated to form that document. There are just countless examples of use cases surrounding that where you've got a very time-consuming process of knowledge retrieval and a time-consuming process of stitching that all together in a story. So those are ones we've enjoyed working on and ones that we just come up with time and time again.
Yeah. From a personal perspective, we've done a truckload of work for suppliers of consenting information to Auckland Council. where they are laden by the standards at which Auckland Council push onto them around meeting guidelines around consents, engineering documentations, etc. The one we're most proud of is an engineering company where we took a 10-hour piece of work and reduced that to a sub 15-minute process, wholly written by AI, which is a full engineering consented document to go to council. Why that's important is that 10 hours to 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so doesn't sound impressive necessarily for just doing it once. But these guys do 3,000 of them a year. So 3,000 times 10 is a truckload of money when you're looking at paying someone $60, $70, $80 an hour to execute that work. And to look at Mary's example of putting 25% capacity back into the system, we've given these guys the ability to quadruple their business pretty much without taking on any additional payroll. That's what drives the productivity benchmark from New Zealand, doing things in the most appropriate way going forward. And to aid you with that thought process, we want to kind of help you with the right tooling to be able to know, is the tedious work of your business transitionable to AI? Now, this workshop is just the start of that. We absolutely recommend doing these sessions in a closed group as well, where you've got you and your peers from the same business, where these things become wholly interactive, and we're pulling together that laundry list. And that's the kind of parting gift to you guys that we want to offer this out, in terms of where to from here. So the methodologies we're using today, we've gone through a fair amount of pace. We do encourage moving to doing this on a one-to-one basis, where we can sit down with your team and go, great, specifically for you in your industry, wherever we've got examples of being able to pattern recognize across the tedious work that you've got, support that with some technical feasibility of saying, look, this is how this can be done, and this is where we've done it before, and the synergies show that there is a pathway for the automation of this work, and then to validate the return on investment metrics and negotiate them through with you. Genuinely, can we put ourselves, SupaHuman and you, behind the numbers? Can we get comfortable that those numbers are holding water, and we can bring just all of the learnings that we've had over the last 18 months to go, look, we've seen these things materialize here. So you are confidently sitting in front of your stakeholders saying, look, this is the investment that I need to unlock this outsized value and support you on that journey. So if you take a snapshot of the QR code on screen, we'll give you a call and see how we can support you with a one-on-one approach to our AI ROI workshops. These are free to you. This is the investment that we make in supporting New Zealand business, and we very much enjoy them. We learn a lot through going through the process. We hope you guys do too. So with that said, thanks for joining the abridged version of the AI ROI workshop. I hope you've taken at least one of the three things that we committed to exchanging with you at the start of this session, which was leaving with a better understanding of a framework about how to think about return on investment, the application of those use cases, and a sense of where there may be tedium inside your organizations that should not be, and a pathway to move that forward. And Justin, as you are the wonderful host and MC of this, I'll pass over to you for closing thoughts and remarks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. Really appreciate your time and for your voice hanging in there as well, as someone who is often on stage and running lots of websites, workshops. I know what it's like when your voice is not together. I've got an hour and a half on stage for a conference tomorrow, so that'll be my talking done for today. Thank you all very much for spending the last hour or so with us. Thank you for being a part of the New Zealand.ai community and part of our academy. We're here to help you elevate and accelerate your AI journey and to find those business problems, business opportunities that are taking up time and costing too much and just that dumb shit that you don't have to do anymore. So it's great to be working with partners like SupaHuman to be able to do that. We look forward to bringing you lots more sessions. Lots more workshops over the coming weeks. So we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks very much for joining us, and cheers, Dave, once again. Talk soon. This recording will also be up. I'll post it in the discussions section when I'm on my way into town shortly.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, team. Thanks, Justin.
Cheers. See you later.
Cheers, guys.